Welcome back. Oh, the risk. I just found out I have a Sleep Number bed, and it's probably intoxicated me with its electricity. Honey, we're gonna have to nix the Sleep Number or something like that. But that's a whole another risk that we'll have to discuss later. But right now, Glen Thiessen is back with us with transition planning, and Glen really helps clients navigate major changes in their life. Welcome back, Glen.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so risk, huh?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the electric blanket that we enjoy.
Oh, man.
It's going to change our lives.
You're just going to be a little colder.
Yeah, well, fortunately, the weather's warming up, so that's good.
That's right. It is interesting, isn't it? The amount of risk that people, you get in your car, you don't think about how much risk there is of people with distracted driving.
No.
You go to your house, you don't realize how much risk there is with the stuff floating around.
It's amazing.
It is.
The stuff that you don't know about, So last time we talked about risk in terms of investments, such as risk tolerance, which is the emotional side of risk. How long can you wait before you bail out? How bad can it get?
Sure.
Then there's the risk requirement. How much risk do you need to take in order to succeed, to accomplish your goals? The risk capacity is how much risk can your portfolio handle without losing too much to be able to even recover. And then we talked about the liquidity risk. If an investment goes bad and you succumb to the urge to get out, can you even do that, right? Without surrender charges and so forth. I mean, like real estate. We talked about that.
Yeah.
It's illiquid, right? And then we talked about interest rate risk last time. As interest rates go up, bond values go down, and you got interest rate risk. Well, we talked also about paying higher interest rate than you're earning at the bank. And, another good reason to be debt-free as much as possible. So we talked about inflation risk, about the value of your dollar, purchasing power going down, and even at 1%, $1,000 25 years down the road only has a purchasing power of $778. That's at 1% inflation. 2% inflation means that $1,000 can only buy $603 worth of merchandise, and at 3%, $467. So as you're going to live, into the future, you got to realize, okay, if you're not thinking about the impact of inflation, you need to figure out what's the real return. If my earnings 6, but inflation is 3, your real rate of return is 3%, right? So you've got to beat inflation by a substantial amount. That brings us to asset allocation. There's the asset allocation risk. And basically, this has a lot to do with the two most powerful emotions that drive people's investment decisions, and that is fear and greed. If things are going well, it's very hard to not take the profit every now and then, right? When you think of, Apple stock, for example, you bought it at $100, it's now over $600. Well, how long do you keep it? At what point do you sell a few shares, take some of the profit, and reinvest that somewhere? So there's the greed side, but then the fear side is, again, back to the risk tolerance. If you don't hang in there and ride it out through the bottom and experience the gain on the other side, then what people end up doing is exactly what you were talking about last time. You buy high, you sell low.
So how do you know? I mean, how often do you reallocate, I suppose? Does it just depend on your life?
It really depends on your goals, your financial goals. Remember what I said is you need to figure out what it is that you want. What are your planned major expenses? When do you want to retire? What lifestyle do you want? What are your needs? Okay, then you need to back off of that and put together a strategy to take care of those planned major expenses. If you're going to need $20,000 in 3 years, have that set aside in some cash, CD or something that's going to mature at that time. But if you don't need money for, let's say, 10 to 15 years, you're not going to want to sit in cash on that, right? So it depends on the time horizon that you need the money on for. So, for example, becoming too conservative with investments can wreck your retirement because you're going to run out of money. You'll spend through it because you're not earning enough to keep up with the cost of living and so forth. So reassessing your portfolio according to what your goals are. Now, if your goals change, then you really need to reassess, how you're investing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So then, let's talk a little bit about that phase in life where you're past the accumulation now. Now you're focused on the distribution phase. You're going to live on your investments, right? And
For
supplement
the
your
lucky
pension.
few people who get to do that.
Let's hope so. I mean, because if you someday have to stop working because you're physically not able, you had better have something to draw income from, right?
Yeah.
And that's another reason why you want to focus on being debt-free as early in life as possible, because that gives you more control over your income so that you can invest, the extra income. And you want to reach retirement as debt-free as possible, so that way you don't need as much income. If you don't need as much income, you can take a little bit less out of your investments. You don't have to get that 12% return because you only need to draw 3% out of your portfolio. See, so that helps. When we deal with the income aspect, I've learned a concept called the Flaw of Averages.
No, not the law.
Not the law. It's the Flaw of Averages. Averages work really good when you're accumulating money, but when you're taking money out of your portfolio, it can really work against you. So I've worked up a spreadsheet here where let's start with $100,000, and let's hope that you have more than that when you retire, but we're talking about the distribution phase here now. So let's say that you retire, and unfortunately the market goes bad, and the first year you're down 18%. Year number 2, you're down 19%. Year number 3, you're down another 4%. But after that, things start picking up.
I mean, that could have easily been, 2007, 2008, 2009?
Actually, no. That was more like the 2001, 2002, 2003, where the world fell apart at that point. It was extended.
It keeps falling apart.
Well, but between there, it went good, right? So
our beds are killing us, man.
So let's say you have a lot of good years. You get to year number 21. The average return was 10%. And, the compounded rate is about 10% on that flow of returns. If you were to reverse those returns so that in the first year you gained 26%, the next year you gained 19%, and it's the last 3 years that you lost the return, the averages work out exactly identically, and the return is identical. That's as you're accumulating money. You can see that the bottom figure here is same $600,000. That $100,000 grew to the same amount, even if you reversed the sequence of returns. But when you're taking money out of the portfolio and you're down as significantly as what I was saying, down 18%, 19, and then 4 before you start gaining, and you're taking $7,000 out of that $100,000, you're going to be out of money by year 13.
So it's a very dangerous. I mean, you start thinking about how you're going to accumulate money, but when you're pulling it out, that doesn't really grow the way it had. And
right.
It's a very dangerous thing. We're here with Glen Thiessen. Glen, we just have about a minute left before we have to go to break. So talk a little bit more about just the sequence. I mean, when you talk about the sequence, this is kind of year over year from when you retire, and you have no control over it.
No, that's the thing. The market has the control. You have control over your asset allocation. So when you're dealing with the income, you do need to have more income-producing assets like bonds. So, for example, you can't get too hung up on the interest changing, and making the bond values fall because the interest rate's going up and so forth. But it's the income-producing, aspect of the bonds that you want to focus on. Like, have those income-producing assets, even high dividend-paying stocks, so that you have the potential for appreciation, but you need the income. You need to focus on that, and then still have something in the portfolio that can grow for the next 15, 20 years into retirement as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic that I don't think people always consider, because most people think about growing their money, but then taking it out, there's still a return you kind of bank on.
Exactly.
And, not always something you consider.
Right.
Hey, stick around for a little bit. We're going to bring everybody back on, and, we're going to discuss kind of this. Well, you think about the sequences, you think about what things are floating around in your house. What are these things that people maybe try to do themselves that they shouldn't? And what are the problems that that's causing? We'll be right back from after this break. That was Glen Thiessen.